Before you spend another dollar this month, you need to know this. 9 money habits that look completely normal are the exact reason your balance never actually grows. Watch this first. You think you're doing okay. Not great, maybe, but okay. You're not blowing money on ridiculous things. You're not gambling. You're not living some reckless lifestyle that anyone could point to and say, there's your problem. You're just living, paying what needs to be paid, getting through each month, doing what most people around you seem to be doing. And yet the number in your account barely moves. The goals you set 6 months ago look exactly the same as they did then. You're making money, spending money, and somehow arriving at the end of every month wondering where it all went. Like water through your hands, gone before you even felt it. Thousands of people have watched this and finally understood why they felt stuck, despite doing everything right. Stay till the end. The last habit is the one that the last ties all the others together. Jake used to feel that exact thing. Every raise he got evaporated. Every time he thought he was getting ahead, something pulled him back. He wasn't careless. He wasn't irresponsible. He just had habits. Quiet ones, normal-looking ones. The kind that feel completely reasonable until you sit down and do the math. And the math destroys you. That's what this is about. 9 habits that look fine on the surface. 9 habits that millions of people share. 9 habits that are bleeding your financial future dry without ever setting off a single alarm. Some of these will feel uncomfortable. You might see yourself in 3 of them, maybe 6, maybe all 9. That discomfort is not an accident. That's the point, because you cannot fix what you refuse to see. Number 1, spending money you haven't earned yet. The paycheck lands Friday. Something catches your eye on Thursday. You know the money's coming. You know it's basically already there. So you spend it. You front-run your own income. You commit money to things before it actually exists in your account, before any surprise can eat into it, before life has a chance to remind you that plans change. Then Friday comes and the money that was supposed to feel like breathing room is already spoken for. A bill here, a purchase there, something you bought on credit because payday was almost here anyway. And you're right back to the same tightness you were trying to escape. This habit operates on certainty you don't actually have. Jobs disappear. Hours get cut. Transfers delay. Unexpected charges appear. The moment you start spending money before it arrives, you eliminate every margin for error in your financial life. You're not managing money, you're managing promises, and promises don't pay overdraft fees. The rule is simple and it's brutal. Unspent money only. If it isn't sitting in your account right now, it doesn't exist yet. Plan with it, sure. Spend it, no. Number 2, letting your subscription silently multiply. You signed up for the streaming platform during a free trial and forgot to cancel. You paid for the app once and it quietly switched to an annual plan. You added the premium tier for 1 month to access one feature and it's been 18 months since then. You said yes to the meal kit service because the first 2 weeks were discounted and now you're paying full price for boxes you barely open. Each one, looked at alone, is almost nothing. $8, $12, $15, $22, not worth the mental energy of thinking about it. But Jake sat down one afternoon and added his up. He found $67 a month going to services he hadn't actively used in over 3 months, not services he didn't like. Services he had completely forgotten existed. $800 a year, gone, silently, automatically, every month like clockwork, while he was busy assuming he knew what he was paying for. This is how subscription creep works. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask for your attention. It just drafts from your account in amounts small enough to ignore individually and large enough to matter collectively. Audit every recurring charge you have, every single one. And if you can't remember what it's for without looking it up, that's your answer. Cancel it. The services worth having will still be there if you decide you need them again. Number 3, treating your raise like found money. You worked for it. You waited for it. You sat through the uncomfortable conversation and made your case, and finally the raise came through. More money hitting your account every 2 weeks. And the feeling is good. It should be good. You earned this. So naturally you let yourself breathe a little. The nicer grocery store instead of the budget one. the apartment upgrade you'd been putting off, dinners out more often because you can actually afford it now. A few things from your wish list that you'd been holding back on for months. Small upgrades, reasonable ones. You're not doing anything crazy. 6 months later, you realize the number in your account looks exactly the same as it did before the raise. Same stress, same feeling of barely getting by, same goals sitting at the same distance. The raise got eaten, every dollar of it absorbed by a lifestyle that quietly expanded to consume whatever new space appeared. This is lifestyle creep, and it's one of the most effective wealth killers in existence because it feels like reward, it feels like progress, it feels like finally letting yourself have what you've earned. The habit that actually builds wealth looks different. When income rises, expenses stay flat. The difference, all of it, or as much as possible, goes somewhere intentional. Investments, debt payoff, a goal with an actual number attached to it. The lifestyle upgrade comes later, slowly, after the foundation is solid. Not immediately, not automatically, not before you've captured the opportunity the raise was actually offering you. Number 4, buying things to feel in control. There is a very specific kind of purchase that happens when life feels overwhelming. When work is difficult and the project isn't going well and the relationship has tension and the future feels uncertain and nothing seems particularly within your grasp, you buy something. It doesn't have to be expensive. Sometimes it's a book on a topic you're stressed about. Sometimes it's organizational supplies, because if you could just get organized, everything would feel more manageable. Sometimes it's workout gear because you're going to start taking better care of yourself. Sometimes it's just a cart full of things on sale, because the act of choosing, clicking, deciding gives you a temporary sense of agency when everything else feels like it's happening to you. The purchase feels like action. It registers in your brain as doing something, as moving toward the better version of your life. It creates a small hit of control in a moment where control feels scarce, except nothing actually changes. The stress is still there when the package arrives. The overwhelm didn't get shipped with the return label. And now you've spent money you didn't plan to spend on things that didn't solve the problem you were actually having. Jake called this retail therapy for years before he realized it wasn't therapy. It was avoidance with a shipping confirmation. When you feel the urge to buy something during a hard moment, wait 48 hours, not forever, 48 hours. If the thing still makes sense when the emotional weather has cleared, buy it then. Most of the time it won't. If this is hitting different, subscribe now. Every week this channel breaks down exactly how money works, what no one taught you in school, and what to do about it, starting today. Number 5, only paying the minimum. The minimum payment feels like responsibility. You're paying your bill, you're not missing a due date, you're keeping your credit in good standing. You're handling it. What you're actually doing is paying the bank to continue owning you. Here's what minimum payments mean in practice. A $4,000 credit card balance at 22% interest, paying only the minimum each month, takes over 15 years to pay off. You end up paying more than $6,000 in interest alone. The bank collects a total of $10,000 from you for the $4,000 you spent. That is not managing debt. That is a subscription to debt, an ongoing monthly payment for the privilege of still owing money to an institution that is not rooting for you. And here's where it gets worse. Most people carrying a balance are also still using the card, so the balance never actually drops because the purchases keep coming in right alongside the minimum payments. You're bailing out a boat while the faucet is still running. Pay more than the minimum every time, even if it's only $20 more. Stop adding to the balance while you're trying to pay it down. The two things cannot happen simultaneously and produce the result you want. Number 6, outsourcing your financial decisions to default. You never sat down and chose your savings rate. It just kind of is what it is, whatever happens to be left over. You never actively decided what percentage of your income goes to housing. You just found a place you liked and said yes. You never chose how much you spend on food each month. You just spend what you spend and it's different every month and you've never really looked. Most of what happens to your money wasn't decided, it defaulted. It happened by accident, by imitation, by whatever felt normal based on the people around you and the culture you grew up in. The problem with defaults is that they weren't designed for your life, your goals, your income, or your future. They're just patterns, and patterns that were never consciously chosen can't be consciously optimized. Wealthy people make explicit decisions about money. They set a savings rate and they protect it. They decide how much housing costs are allowed to consume and they stick to it. They define what food spending looks like in a given month and they track it against that number. Everything is chosen. Very little is left to drift. This doesn't require complicated spreadsheets or a finance degree. It requires one honest afternoon where you look at your income, decide what matters to you, and assign percentages intentionally instead of waiting to see what's left over. Defaults got you here. Decisions are what get you somewhere different. Number 7, avoiding the numbers because they're uncomfortable. You have a rough idea of what's in your account, a vague sense of what you owe, an approximate feel for whether this is a good month or a bad one. You work from feeling instead of from data because looking at the actual data is uncomfortable. Seeing the real number on the credit card balance is uncomfortable. Seeing what you spent on food last month, the total, the real total, is uncomfortable. Seeing the gap between what you earn and what you're building toward is uncomfortable, so you keep it vague. Vague is easier. Vague doesn't require you to change anything because you haven't technically confirmed that anything needs changing. Jake avoided looking at his credit card statements for almost 2 years. Not because he didn't care, because caring and looking at the reality of it at the same time was too much. So he kept the number fuzzy and kept telling himself it wasn't that bad, it was that bad. The fog is not protecting you, the fog is costing you. Every month you operate without clear numbers is another month your money is making decisions without your input. You cannot close a gap you refuse to measure. You cannot fix a leak you've decided not to locate. Pull up every account, write down the real numbers, all of them. The balance, the interest rate, the monthly minimum, the monthly actual spending, all of it. One honest look at the full picture is worth more than a year of vague intentions. Number 8, believing you'll figure it out later. Later when you make more. Later when life calms down. Later when you understand investing better. Later when the debt is smaller. Later when things make more sense. Later when the timing feels more right. Later is doing a tremendous amount of work in your financial life. It is absorbing every uncomfortable decision that doesn't have to be made today. It is the drawer where financial intentions go to disappear. Every week you wait is compound growth you never get back. That isn't motivational language, that is arithmetic. Money invested at 30 grows to a very different number by 65 than money invested at 42. The math isn't close, it isn't subtle. The difference is hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes more, built not from extra income or perfect timing or financial expertise, but purely from starting earlier rather than later. And the cruelest part, the habits you keep waiting to build don't appear automatically when the circumstances improve. People who can't manage a little money don't magically manage a lot of it. The income rises, the lifestyle rises to match. The same lack of structure that existed before exists now with bigger numbers and bigger consequences. There is no version of your future self who is wiser and more disciplined and better positioned than the person reading this right now. That future person is built by starting now. The skills, the habits, the systems, they develop through practice, not through waiting. Start now, something, anything, even if the amount feels embarrassingly small. The amount is not the point. The habit is the point. The compounding starts the moment you start, not later. Now! Every week you wait is a week of compound growth that never comes back. Next week, this channel goes deep on exactly how to start building that system, even if you only have $50. Subscribe so it's there when it drops. Number 9, learning about money from people who don't have any. This one is quiet. It doesn't feel like a mistake because it doesn't feel like a choice. The people who raised you handled money a certain way, so that became your template. The friends around you have the same income and the same spending patterns and the same vague unease at the end of every month, so that becomes your baseline for normal. The culture you're absorbing through your phone every day is mostly aspirational consumption, mostly people spending and acquiring and signaling, not mostly people quietly building. You're being educated about money constantly. You just haven't been choosing your teachers. Financial behavior is inherited the same way accents are inherited. You don't decide to pick it up. You absorb it from your environment over time until it feels like your own. The beliefs, the habits, the relationship with earning and spending and saving, most of it was installed before you were old enough to question it. And if the people who installed it were themselves struggling, if they carried debt and avoided conversations about money and lived paycheck to paycheck and made financial decisions based on emotion rather than strategy, then the programming you're running might not be yours, it might be theirs. The only way to override a default is to replace it with something intentional. That means actively seeking out financial knowledge, not passively hoping to absorb better habits from an environment that hasn't changed. Understanding how interest works against you and for you. Learning what a tax-advantaged retirement account actually does and why it matters. Understanding why index funds have historically outperformed most actively managed portfolios. Learning what a credit score actually measures and how to use that knowledge. This isn't about becoming a finance expert. It's about refusing to stay financially illiterate in a world where that illiteracy is the difference between building something real and spending your entire life funding everyone else's something. Here's what ties all 9 of these together. None of them feel like mistakes while you're doing them. That's the whole problem. They feel normal. They feel like what people do. They feel manageable, reasonable, not urgent enough to address today. That feeling is exactly what makes them so expensive. Every habit on this list compounds the same way investments do, just in the wrong direction. Every month you front-run your income, you eliminate your margin. Every month your subscriptions draft silently, you lose money you didn't consciously choose to spend. Every raise that gets absorbed by lifestyle inflation is an opportunity that will not come back. Every minimum payment is a month of renting a debt that isn't getting smaller. Every day you spend in the financial fog is a day your money makes decisions without you. The root of almost every one of these habits is the same thing. Nobody taught you differently. So you defaulted, you copied, you inherited, you ran the programming that was installed before you knew there was any other option. Nobody taught you this stuff. That's not an excuse. It's a starting point. This channel exists to give you what school never did. Real explanations, practical systems, no fluff, no selling dreams, no pretending it's easy when it isn't. Just the knowledge that actually changes where you end up. Subscribe if that's the kind of content you actually want. Which one of these 9 hit the hardest for you? Drop the number in the comments. Not because it's a poll, because naming it out loud is the first step to doing something about it. You've now seen 9 of them. You know what to look for. You felt the recognition, maybe uncomfortable, maybe more than once in this list. The habits that got you here won't get you there. Next week, the exact 5-step system Jake used to go from carrying a $6,000 credit card balance to fully paid off in 11 months, without a raise, without a side hustle, just a system that actually worked. Subscribe. Don't miss it.